Okay. I need to do this new recording because this old recording is old and we've updated this project some. Okay, so I'll update that. So let's go to the project description. So this project's worth 50 points. Just to put that in context, that's fine. That's worth as much as all the assignments so far here. So it's a significant, but there are no exams in this class. There are projects. And so the project is equivalent point-wise to an exam. So you should take it seriously and like this. This is where most students lose points is on these projects here. There are some required features. You have to do a model view model. Oh, I said model view presenter also, but the model view presenter is no longer available. So you want to do a model view model. So basically you want to use a view model in your project there. You've got to get data from somewhere. You can store data locally on an SQL database. You can get data from a web service like an API, or you can use Firebase to store data for this. So you have to use one of those data sources of some sort there. So that probably means you're going to need a data entity to store this stuff, and then some method or some file, classes to manage that. So normal proper coding techniques here. We will revisit this more towards the end next week or the week when you're getting there and help clean up some of your code, talk about Java doc style comments. But at least for now, make sure you're using useful variable names and methods and that sort of stuff. And again, we'll talk about this storing strings in the string XML file there. So then you want to select some features here. I try to keep this as open as possible for this one. You want to select 15 points of features in here. So some of these things, so let's say you want a master, a list layout, and you click on an item, you do a detailed view, you can do that. That's worth 10 points here. Custom menus. Again, some of the stuff is just we haven't even talked about yet, but you might get into. You want to use your GPS. You want to create custom icons, handle images or something like that, handle exceptions. So there's different things you can do here for this. So you don't have to, of course, do all those. You have to do all of the required features, and then you can just select usually 2 or 3 of these will get you to enough points. We're going to do this in 2 weeks. So this first week, by Sunday, we want you just to have a basic UI set up there. What's the layout going to be? And then the next week, we want you to have the database or whatever your data is getting from added in. And then on the 14th, which is a class day, we'll do demonstrations in class for this stuff. We are probably not going to do the come up here and do a form. We'll have to talk about that next week. Sometimes we've had you come up here and do a presentation. Often we'll just have you go around and share each other. I have to see each of yours stuff. So you can kind of think about how you want to do that. If you want to have people come up here, or if you just wanted, where we just mosey, have everyone rotate around and see each other's projects. So I'm fine. There's no point. There's 5 points assigned that you have to share your project. And again, with the online students, we will want you to record a video just walking through this. So, okay, let's talk about. So there's these 3 sprints. So the first sprint is, again, just basically set up the UI. It should be very minimal so you can build on it for it. We will talk about some of the starting layouts here that help you get started in just a sec. Sprint 2 is adding the database, Firebase, Room database, whatever, the web service here for this. And then the final thing is the demonstration here and what you have to submit. So eventually you want to submit a list of what features you implemented to reach your points a paragraph telling how you use AI in the project, record a walkthrough of a selected piece of code. So again, I want you to pick some code and explain it as if you're talking to a fellow developer. What we will do is the Tuesday of class, that Tuesday of 14th, we will do some sort of thing here where if you want, you can explain your code then. My thought is that you would interview a fellow student and they would come over and you would walk them through the code there. And they would maybe just record you walking through the code for that, and then you could share that there. Online people or people who aren't there are going to have to record this like we've seen some other places and submit it. But we want you to be able to explain some, so you can pick your section of code. And again, how much code? Again, I'm thinking maybe like 20 lines, you know, a good class, and maybe some of the stuff that feeds into the class a little bit there. So something like that would be good. And again, you want to then commit and push your project to GitHub and submit a link to it so I can see it. Let's talk about starting projects. I'm going to close this one. Okay. I'm going to close this one too for now. Okay. You can pick what language you want to learn. There's basically, or do this, and there are three main options here. You can do Java views. If you're using Java, you have to use XML views. So XML layouts with Java code. That's fine. You can do, the other thing we've been doing is Kotlin with Jetpack Compose. So use these composable functions, the composable UI and Kotlin commands. You can't really do Compose with Java. So there. Now, one thing we haven't really looked at, but you can do, just an option, is you can do Kotlin with views and XML layout files and stuff like that. So if you want to do that, you can certainly do that. So those are the three choices. We've mainly been doing this and this in class, right? There. Now, you're free to start with some of these templates out here. So let's talk about the templates here. So if you say new project, it lists some templates already. So the empty activity is a compose. This is when we are doing a Kotlin compose, we do this. If you want an empty one with views in Java, you do this one. But there are some other ones here that you can create for different things. So this one is, let's just do this. So this is a basic views one. This has a drawer slide out, and this has a bottom navigation. Let's just do a simple project with that. So this is basic app. And I'm just going to switch to Java and say we're doing Java with views and create that. So again, that's this one. So it's going to have a menu. See the dot, dot, dot up here? That's going to be, the three dots means you can click on that and there's a menu up there you can select. This is a floating action button. So that'll be built in. So you can click on that to add, and you can change the icon in that. And then a little bit of top navigation. So all that stuff will be built into your app here. There's one where you have some bottom navigation where you can switch screens. There's also one where navigation drawer pulls out from the left side. So again, you can just use a gesture from the left side to pull out a navigation drawer and do that. So you're free to use any of those stuff. So here is this still building. Okay. Okay, so you're free to use any of those starting templates if you want and help get started. Use of AI, you can choose how much AI you want to use in this. If you you'll want to just write all the code yourself. And again, if you get stuck, go to AI and help it with debugging. That's fine. If you want AI to generate much of the code and you just want to define the architecture and the layout and stuff like that, you can do that in the project. Either way, you've got to make sure you know the code well enough so that you can pick part of the code and describe it to you. You also have to make sure it fits the requirements. It needs a view model and the layout there. So and by default, AI won't be creating view models for you unless you tell it to. So, and again, you have to describe in your submission how much you used AI in the final project. I'll ask you, when I ask you, I say, how much did you use AI? Do you think it helped you make a better app? And how did it affect your learning? Did you learn more or less using AI for this stuff? So, I'll also note that if you are using AI, one thing I am noticing, okay, well here, I'm just gonna show this app. So this is this template that's running. It was running. So this is showing the app. This is this version. It has two fragments, fragment 1 and fragment 2 here. And then it has this navigation between them. So that's set up automatically. It has this menu here. The only thing is available is settings, and it doesn't actually go to the settings screen, but the menu is here. Here, and then it has, this is the floating action bar. They've changed this to an email rather than a plus here. But again, you can do this and do an action. So that's kind of this default layout here. In your app, you'll see the main activity, and then the first fragment and the second fragment, you'll see the layouts of the activity, the first fragment, second. We haven't talked about menus, but there's a whole menu XML file here and that lays out the menu for this. And right now it just says settings there. So again, you can start with this. You don't have to have a menu. You don't have to, do much of this. But again, it's sometimes if you want to create a full app to start with, that's a good way to do it. I actually think some things like that are a good place to use AI, like with the menu. You say, oh, can you just give me a menu and put in these 2 or 3 things and generate, tell me how to do that. Because it's not something we've covered in the class, but you might want to put it in your app and then you can focus on some of the other stuff. So if you want to use AI like that, I think that's a fine way to use AI. I also should mention that I found the AI that comes with this not the greatest. This Gemini, and I don't know why, but and maybe it's different for you as students, but when I ask questions here, the default model is not great. Every once in a while, when I get stuck, I switch to the Pro model, but I only get so much activity on the Pro model before it falls out on me. I actually have much better results using ChatGPT 5. Is a very good coder. I actually use Gemini a fair amount, the actual, not based in here, but the actual Gemini, and run that on a coding version of that. Because for some reason, when I use it in my other account, I can access the Pro or the higher level versions of it better. And I've heard what. Yeah.
I was wondering, do you think it's because they have worse models in the?
I think so. That's what I assume, because they list the default model. They list, I think it's using Flashlight a lot. And I don't know if you've tried these different models, but like Flashlight, usually the light version is not good at coding there and stuff. So I think it's using some of these models because when I've gotten really stuck on trying to figure, so I switch it to Pro, and it can almost always help me out with Pro, where with it's a default version, it's not very good. So, yeah.
How much do you get out of a program? Like make most of it in Flash and then just tell the code to fix it?
Right, that's what I mean, I just leave it as default mode because, and then I generate a bunch of it in default mode. And then when I switch to debugging, if it can't fix it right away, I switch it to Pro and have Pro fix it. It's kind of like if you're, in my mind, I'm working on it, I've got a couple interns and I have an expert. And by default, you're just going to the new, sending the interns to do all this, create menus or create this sort of stuff. In my mind, I use student workers, but we'll just call them interns. So, go do this stuff. I don't want, I set up my menus and that, and just basic, simple stuff. But if something gets wrong, then I'm turning to the expert and saying, okay, something's not right. Or also when I do a big layout or change of something like this, like I'll like take the whole thing, yeah, and say, oh, I need to put a view model in here. I'll do it without a view model and say, now I'll put a view model in there, and that's a little more complicated. So again, you can decide how much you want to use AI for this or not. And so I decide, because I was trying to decide what to make you do, and I decided I would force you one way or the other, because I could see some benefit not using AI and learning some of the code yourself, but I also can see some benefit of using AI a fair amount and seeing what you can create with that as well, and then having you look at the code. So, okay. So that's the project. So why don't you spend some time in class now thinking about the project here. I'd like to do one-on-one meetings with each of you to go over this. So they're not required, but they're strongly suggested. So my goal is that if you're in class today, we'll do those one-on-one meetings in 10, 15 minutes. As soon as you're ready, we'll just brainstorm and think of some ideas of what you want to do and walk you through it. And if you're not in class, you can sign up for a Zoom meeting there. I've had some like text exchanges or email exchanges with students that work pretty well for this too. So if that works better for your communication style, think of that. And again, if you're in class and you'd rather do it later, and Eva already left. She says, oh, hey, she's sad she had something come up, but we all know that. Oh, yes, I just got a text message. That's what had happened. That's why I'm grabbing my phone, and even though it didn't vibrate or ring or anything. Okay. I'm going to stop. Questions on this project?
Do you have any recommendations on ideas or things that we can do for this?
I would. You cannot create a commercial app in a week and a half, obviously, there. So I would try to think of something very simple that you can do that uses this. And maybe something related to an interest you have. So if I were doing, I might just do a fish navigation, or a fish tracking. So when I go out fishing or my buddies go out fishing, when we find a fish or we catch a fish, we record lure, type of day, where we caught it, put in the GPS coordinates there. There's a lot of features you can add to it later. And initially, I can just display a list of fish there. I don't have to display it on a map. I don't have to even get the GPS coordinates, but eventually I could see it being there. I mean, I use a similar app. I used to use a map marker. I think it's where I can put map markers on my map, on the map, and then record information about each one there. It's not fish specific, but there's apps out there. Think of think of, or else an XML, like a data source you might want to have. So maybe you want to pull data from a web service. What's the web service that interests you, and how would you display this web service? Or just store some information, like you want to go beyond the chore list, the to-do list or the shopping list where you just have one item, but you don't have to go too much beyond that there. So figure out what you might want to keep track of or record. You can use, Firebase here, we run this, it's basically like a little social media app, so it's not that hard to create a little social media, a chat so that everyone you can post messages or information and everyone sees those. You just post them to Firebase and, everyone will get those updates. So you can certainly do something like a social media, or a shared data app. I don't know if that helps. Okay, so other questions? All right, I'm gonna stop this.